Hi, my sister. Come, have a seat. Sit down with me by the fireplace in my little space and let's talk. I heard you say it. You told me about your past, about all the relationships and how they've been going, and you have come to the conclusion that you don't know jack squat what's going on. It's complicated. You've been with one man for 5 years, maybe another for 6 years, broke up last year, interested in another guy this year. Seems to be the story of modern women, and there's no condemnation. I'm talking to sisters. Welcome to Call for Wisdom. My name is Deborah, and this show is for the sisters, those of you who are joining me and you are Yah-fearing, God-fearing women who are seeking to follow the Torah, the Bible. That's the book for me. You want to keep close to the Word of God. Like, this is not about religion. It's not about sex. It's just you and I talking about how can we live lives to glorify the Most High, and how can we clean up the mess that we're in so that we can find godly husbands and godly relationships. But my talk today is about it being more complicated than you realize, right? Your relationship is a mess. Your past history maybe is a mess, and you don't really know if you're married or not. And for secular people in the world, you might say, how do you not know you're married? I mean, don't you remember getting the big white dress, walking down the aisle, and getting the piece of paper called the certificate of marriage from the state? But if you've been following my channel and you've been learning some things about biblical marriage, you realize that if you're following the Torah, the Bible, there is no command that thou must go to a state and get the government to sign off a contract with you, your husband, and you to sign, and that is called marriage. This is not what marriage is called in the Bible. The covenant of marriage does not require a piece of paper. The covenant of marriage is actually simpler, but deeper and easier to fall into than you realize. And therefore, it's complicated. So what I'm going to talk about is like a little bit of mixture of that today. Just hang in with me. And then I'm going to advise you at the end, for those of you who don't want to stick to the end, that you need to get some advice from the elders, from people that are mature in the faith, brothers and sisters that are mature in the faith. Open your story up to them. If you trust them with confidentiality, speak to them and get some advice about where you stand in your relationship and in your past history. The importance of that is very, very, very important, because if you do not know your past history and how it aligns with Torah, past history means your relationships with men in the past, and how that has affected you right now, you might do two things. You might, number one, be involved in adultery because you have been married and you didn't realize you were married, and now you've been just committing adultery with all the rest of them. Or you might be two, just playing a harlot. Or you might be simply, let's add another three, really, really right now committed to somebody that is your husband. And because you haven't studied it and the two of you have not verbalized it in a clear and concise way, it is like a grayness of, I don't know what's going on. It's complicated, right? So let's work on that, my sisters, today. Welcome to Call for Wisdom. Again, my name is Deborah. If you like it so far, like, subscribe, follow me. Let's have these deep discussions with the Torah and you.
A woman was speaking somewhere and she said, this is my third marriage. She said, well, I'm happy that I met the right person now. But she said, you know what? It cost me so much. I was in my first marriage for years. I had to put my vision on hold because the man that I married became a prayer point, not a prayer partner. That was what I did the entire time in the marriage, praying for God to change this man. The second relationship too said I was too quick. Said I met the man and the man said I have to marry him. I didn't want to lose the man. Quickly, I agreed and married him. And it ended in divorce. Now I'm married. I'm happy that God gave me another chance. But I tell you, it cost me a lot. She said it cost her so much. Emotionally, mentally, physically, financially. She said I didn't have a life. She said God was telling her, do you know, if you had sought me well before the first marriage, you could have gotten it right. We must sacrifice the time in prayer to get it right the first time. You know why? It's costly to have to redo things over and over and over again.
So did you get that in this TikTok? The story is given that there is this woman who is married 3 times. Number 1 husband, she prayed about it, she didn't think about it, and she divorced him. Now, it didn't say that she divorced him, but statistically, most likely, the man didn't give her the divorce. The way that the story is told, this woman, the wife, was upset with her first husband because she thought that she didn't pray enough about him and she chose wrongly, so therefore, maybe they grew apart, in some way. That's how it goes. I grew apart. Whatever that means. Okay, second husband comes along, the same scenario. She divorces him. She grew apart or whatever reason. It's complicated. The third husband, she's now in, she's happy that the Lord gave her. And my question is, for you who are Torah observant believers, is she really married to this third husband? Or has she committed adultery? That's the question. And it's a deep question that we don't like because we have thrown the Torah out the door and we're now going by the world standards, right? The world standards of the way that we see marriage is that certificates are how you get married. You go to the court, you get a piece of paper called a marriage certificate. And with that, you have been given the authority of the state to have this covenant with the man, right? And they ask you as a woman permission. Okay, fine. All right. The second stage is that if you're upset in any moment for no fault, we're into no faults now, right? You just don't feel like it. You've lost the zest. He doesn't satisfy you in some way, shape, or form. Therefore, you can get to the point where you want a divorce. Okay. So the woman now is allowed to, according to the secular world, initiate this divorce by going to the court on her own and signing herself out of the marriage. Correct? You're following me? Now this goes totally contrary to the way that the Bible, the Torah, explains divorce. So the first marriage, in this example, this lady got out on her own by getting a divorce in the state. But she was not given a bill of divorce like Moses wrote in the law. So I'm going to open up the Torah. Follow me because it's complicated. Take your time. Follow me to Deuteronomy chapter 24 verses 1, and we're going to go through divorce laws just for a little discussion. Not much, don't worry, just a little bit. We'll go deeper into this with Brother Michael or maybe even Pete Rambo or one of the theologians' brothers, because I'm not teaching any men theology here. By the way, this is for the sisters, and the sisters and I are just grabbing a cup of tea, having a little Bible study, talking about our complicated relationships. All right? So if you are married, sister, by the way, go and run this through your husband, who should be your head. And if he's a Christian or a believing Torah observant believer, always pass new theologies that you're not sure of through your head. Don't go through Deborah. Go through him. Say, what do you think about this little lady on the internet? Okay, here we go. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 1. It reads, I'm bringing it from the Old Bible here. The New American Standard Version, 24 verse 1. When a man takes a wife and marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some indecency in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce. Writes her a certificate. He does it, not the court. And puts it in her hand, and sends her out from his house. Now, these days, you don't actually have to use a piece of paper. It could be an email. It's a form of communication from the man, a certificate like a letter, form of communication making it very clear from the husband that he no longer wants you because he's found something indecent in you, and he writes you a letter saying so, and he puts it in your hand, well, gives it to you, right, in some way, shape, and form, and he puts you out. Like, that's a two-part process. He doesn't just write it. He opens the gate, the door, and kicks you out. Not the opposite way, by the way. You notice it's not the woman doing this, it's the husband doing this. In Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 2 says, and she leaves the house and goes and becomes another man's wife. So you are allowed to remarry after you got the certificate of divorce in your hand by your husband, not by the state, by your husband, right? And it's complicated because your husband can also want this divorce and go through the state and do it that way. But the whole point is that it's by your husband, right? He wants this divorce. He makes sure he has it. He gives you the certificate and he sends you going, packing. Once you're gone packing, you can remarry according to Deuteronomy chapter 2, not Deborah, chapter 24, verse 2. And if she leaves the house and goes and becomes another man's wife, and if the latter husband turns against her and writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house, like this is husband number 2. He also doesn't like her. I mean, she needs to change something up and something's going on. He doesn't find her a very, something indecent, something. And he puts a certificate in divorce in her hand. The second one. Or if the latter husband dies, who took her to be his wife, like he choked. Too much cholesterol, he poisoned her somehow. I mean, don't do anything illegal, sisters, But the second one died, okay? Okay, then the former husband, that means the first husband, who sent her away is not allowed to take her again to be his wife, since she has been defiled, for that is an abomination before the Lord, and you shall not bring sin on the land which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance. So the very first husband is not allowed to marry her again, because he gave her a certificate of divorce, sent her away, they had sex, the seed is in her. She's not allowed to go back to him, because he will be defiling, mixing seeds, not allowed to go back to the first husband. Got it, very clear. But she was married to the second because she was allowed to with the bill of divorce, but he choked. Therefore, the key here in divorce law in Deuteronomy is that it is initiated, first of all, by a man. He is the one who consents or agrees to give you the permission to leave his house by writing it down, right? And giving you that certificate of divorce in some shape or form that you have it. These days it could be email, letter, a statement of his saying he no longer wants to be married to you and he's letting you go, so that you can show that to the next man who takes you in as proof that you are legally set free based on Torah. We've forgotten all these things now. Now we're too modern. We think that we are beyond the Torah, and therefore it has become complicated for us when we come back into the faith. Because sometimes we end up like this lady that I just showed. She had the first marriage, got divorced, second marriage, got divorced. She's on the third. And the way she got divorced is the problem, right? It's complicated. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to judge her about adultery here. I'm just saying, sisters, if you are in these similar situations, you need to seek counsel by a Yah-fearing, Torah-observant elder, preferably a male one, who knows the theology of the Torah very well and can listen to what you're saying very clearly, and you can get clarity to it. It's important because if you are not doing it biblically correct, then you can line up, make yourself become an adulterous woman by having extramarital affairs because you were not set free by your shepherd. You just left. Shepherd meaning your husband, right? He upset you, he got you mad, you left the relationship. You're the one who left the relationship without the bill of divorce from him. Now, if you are like jumping over a fence, let's say women are sheep. You know me already. I'm talking about women being sheep in the last 3 episodes or so. You're a sheep. The shepherd is a husband. He has caged you into his cage. You got upset with the shepherd for some reason. You cannot push the shepherd out of his own flock. You ever seen a tall, handsome shepherd saying, "Oh my goodness, I'm so intimidated. These sheep don't want me no more." And the sheep kick you out? The sheep don't kick the shepherd out, my sisters. He'll open the gate and let you out. He'll give you a bill of divorce, but you cannot kick him out of his own flock. All right? It's his flock. You leave. And when you left, if you didn't get permission to leave, you have now left illegally. Right? Sometimes you're leaving for your own security. And then we'll read that later on in Matthew, a little bit later on. And that's a different thing, but that is not necessarily a permission to remarry. It's just that you cannot live with the shepherd because maybe it's a dangerous situation. But again, it's complicated. You need to seek advice. Every individual has a story. And I dare say that you can't just get the answer from an episode on YouTube from this strange woman called Deborah. Call for wisdom. Like, subscribe, Share if you dare. Share it if you dare. But you need to face it. You can't hide your head under the sand and say that, you know what, that was my past. I didn't understand Torah before, and that's my past, and Yah has forgiven me, so let's just move on. No, you need to face it. You need to deal with it, and you need to try to clear things up, biblically speaking, so that you can rest in assurance and peace. That moving forward, your ducks are in order. You have resolution. You have biblical clarity. You know that moving forward, you're going to not repeat the sins of the past and make up the mistakes of the past, because this kingdom has real laws. There's no kingdom on the earth that has no laws. It's called a lawless society that the gangsters and the mafia run. But in Yah's kingdom, it's called the Torah, and we follow the Torah and laws of the Torah. And Yeshua, Jesus, never changed it. He followed it to the T. He encouraged us to follow it. He doesn't contradict it. And if you think he contradicted it, you're wrong. He's right. And you need to align yourself to the Torah. And that's why I went right back to Deuteronomy 24 about that. And now, this, in the example I showed on YouTube with the content creator who did that, she was talking about certificates of marriage. The person was legally married with the state. But you don't need a certificate to have been married. And that's another episode coming up. Thanks for following Call for Wisdom. Thanks, my sisters. I love you all. Thanks for hanging out with me. Take care, and we'll continue this conversation about it being complicated.
What's your craziest confession?
So a few years ago, I dated this guy. He cheated on me and lied to my face. So I dated his younger brother to get back at him. And then the younger brother introduced me to the family, and he was right there.
Whoa. How young was the younger brother?
Oh, just 1 year younger than me.
Than you?
Yeah.
How old was he?
The older brother?
Yeah.
Just 3 years older than me.
So you dated someone to use them?
Basically.
For how long?
Nah, it wasn't long. Just after he introduced me, I broke up with him.
What? Okay, how did the main boyfriend feel about all this?
He DM'd me about it and he didn't like it, so...
Would you do it again?
No.
Would you go back to him?
Nope.
Do you want to look at the camera or walk away?
Walk away.
Walk, shorty, walk.